Good evening, I'm Alex Truth.
And I'm Maya Clarity. Welcome to Truth Report. Tonight, we're bringing you stories the energy establishment doesn't want connected, and we're going to connect them anyway.
Because when you look past the headlines, what you see is a pattern. Tariff threats masking resource grabs. 50 years of coordinated suppression. And American consumers footing the bill for infrastructure they never asked for.
We've spent the week verifying sources, pulling documents, and following the money. What we found should alarm anyone who pays an electricity bill or fills a gas tank.
Let's start with the story that broke this weekend. President Trump, fresh off his Davos confrontations, issued a threat that on the surface looks like trade policy. But dig one layer deeper, and it's about something else entirely.
On Saturday, January 24th, Trump posted on social media that he would impose a 100% tariff on all Canadian imports if Prime Minister Mark Carney proceeds with a recently negotiated trade deal with China. According to reporting from NPR, CNBC, and Al Jazeera, this deal involves Canada accepting up to 49,000 Chinese electric vehicles in exchange for China lowering tariffs on Canadian canola and agricultural products.
Now, Trump framed this as Canada becoming a drop-off port for Chinese goods flooding the American market. But here's what's interesting, just days earlier, Trump himself said Carney signing a trade deal with China was a good thing, and that, if you can get a deal with China, you should do that. So what changed?
What changed is that this deal specifically involves electric vehicles. Chinese EVs that are already undercutting Western manufacturers on price and increasingly on technology. And Trump's rhetoric shifted the moment those vehicles entered the equation.
But there's another layer here that most outlets buried in their coverage. In the same weekend of posts, Trump claimed the United States would process seized Venezuelan oil, saying, "We take the oil. Not buy. Not negotiate for. Take."
This is critical context. Because what we're witnessing isn't trade policy, it's resource nationalism wrapped in tariff language. Trump is simultaneously threatening a northern neighbor over EV competition while openly discussing seizure of southern petroleum reserves.
According to The Guardian's reporting, which we attempted to verify but found their site blocking automated access, Trump posted an altered map showing Venezuela, Canada, Greenland, and Cuba as part of U.S. territory. This wasn't a joke. This is telegraphing intention.
And the timing matters. Canada just negotiated access to Chinese EVs vehicles powered by batteries, not petroleum. Venezuela has some of the world's largest proven oil reserves. One represents the future of transportation. The other represents the past. And the U.S. president is threatening one while claiming the other.
Let's talk about why this matters for American consumers. The USMCA trade agreement, which replaced NAFTA, currently facilitates billions in daily cross-border trade with Canada. According to multiple sources including PBS and NBC News, a 100% tariff would effectively double the price of Canadian imports.
That means lumber for construction. That means automotive parts even for gas-powered vehicles manufactured in integrated North American supply chains. That means agricultural products, electricity, and natural gas that flows south across the border.
But it also means something else. It means American consumers would be explicitly blocked from accessing more affordable electric vehicle options while being kept dependent on petroleum-based transportation. And that brings us to our second story.
Because it turns out, keeping Americans dependent on fossil fuels isn't a new strategy. It's been the explicit goal of the world's largest oil companies for 50 years. And now there's a lawsuit that lays it all out.
On January 23, Michigan Attorney General Dana Nessel filed a federal antitrust lawsuit in the Western District of Michigan. The defendants, BP, Chevron, ExxonMobil, Shell, and the American Petroleum Institute. The charge, operating as an illegal cartel to suppress renewable energy competition for nearly 5 decades.
According to the lawsuit, which we've reviewed alongside reporting from Jurist, Common Dreams, and the Michigan Public Radio, this isn't about climate denial. This is about antitrust law, specifically the Sherman Act of 1890, the Clayton Act of 1914, and Michigan's own Antitrust Reform Act.
The complaint alleges specific, coordinated actions. Exxon developed market-ready hybrid vehicle prototypes in the late 1970s, and then shelved them. Chevron acquired patents for nickel-metal hydride batteries, the technology that would later power the first generation of hybrid vehicles, and then used restrictive licensing and litigation to block competitors.
Shell and BP abandoned commercially viable solar ventures after investing millions in development. And collectively, according to the lawsuit, all defendants refused to install EV charging infrastructure at their thousands of retail gas station locations.
Now, why does that last point matter? Because gas stations are ubiquitous. They're already zoned, already connected to electrical grids, already positioned along highways and in communities. If oil companies had installed charging stations starting in the 1990s or 2000s, the infrastructure barrier that slowed EV adoption would barely exist.
Instead, as the lawsuit alleges, they coordinated through the Oil and Gas Climate Initiative and other industry groups to redirect capital away from renewables and toward technologies that promote continued fossil fuel dependence. This is per se violation territory under Sherman Act Section 1, meaning the actions are so inherently anti-competitive they're illegal without even examining market effects.
Attorney General Nessel's office stated they uncovered one of the most successful antitrust conspiracies in United States history, while initially investigating climate fraud claims. Think about that language. One of the most successful. 50 years of coordination.
The lawsuit seeks permanent injunctive relief, disgorgement of profits, treble damages, and a jury trial. Chevron has already called it baseless, pointing to dismissed climate-related lawsuits in 7 states and Puerto Rico. But this isn't a climate lawsuit. This is antitrust.
And the distinction matters because antitrust law is designed to protect consumers and market competition. The allegation here is that Michigan consumers, and by extension American consumers, were forced to pay artificially high prices for energy while cheaper renewable alternatives were systematically suppressed.
Which brings us directly to Georgia. Because while oil companies spent 50 years blocking renewable competition, utilities watched and learned. And now they're applying the same playbook to the data center boom.
In December 2025, the Georgia Public Service Commission unanimously approved Georgia Power's request to build nearly 10,000 megawatts of new generating capacity, primarily through 5 new natural gas plants. The stated reason, powering data centers. The projected cost, $16.3 billion in construction.
But here's what Georgia Power isn't advertising prominently. According to the PSC's own staff estimates, reported by the Atlanta Journal-Constitution and Georgia Recorder, customers will pay $50 billion to $60 billion over the next 50 years once you include interest costs and guaranteed profit margins for the monopoly utility.
For context, that's roughly $20 more per month on customer bills. Not for energy used. Not for improvements to existing infrastructure. For new gas plants built to power data centers operated by some of the world's wealthiest corporations.
The Southern Environmental Law Center, Sierra Club, and Southern Alliance for Clean Energy filed challenges to this plan, which they describe as expensive and unnecessary. According to their joint statement, Georgia Power is essentially accountable to no one while ratepayers bear the entire financial burden.
Now, Georgia Power has promised rate relief, $8.50 per month between 2029 and 2031. 3 years of modest relief in exchange for 5 decades of payments. The environmental groups argue this promise is unenforceable and won't hold up over the 40-plus years needed to pay off these plants.
And there's another problem. These are gas plants, fossil fuel infrastructure with 40-year operational lifespans being built in 2026. Which means Georgia is locking in methane dependence until 2066, well past every climate target and likely past the point when renewables plus storage will be dramatically cheaper.
But the data centers will pay for it, right? That's the promise. Except the actual agreement requires data center revenue to reduce rates only during those 3 years Maya mentioned. After that, it's all on residential and commercial customers.
This is the fossil fuel industry playbook applied to electricity generation. Socialize the costs, privatize the profits, and lock in long-term dependence on your product. Georgia consumers are paying $60 billion so Google, Meta, Amazon, and Microsoft can power AI servers.
Meanwhile, across the Pacific, Chinese manufacturers are racing ahead on the technology that could actually reduce energy costs and emissions. Volvo's parent company, Geely, just announced they'll complete production of their first in-house solid-state battery pack this year, 2026.
According to reporting from Electrek, which we verified through multiple industry sources, Geely's solid-state lithium manganese iron phosphate battery achieves 15% higher energy density than conventional lithium-ion batteries. That means more range in a smaller, lighter, cheaper package.
And critically, solid-state batteries address the safety concerns that have plagued EV adoption. They're far more resistant to catching fire because they eliminate the liquid electrolyte that makes lithium-ion batteries combustible under certain conditions.
Geely joins Dongfeng, FAW Group, and SAIC-MG in pushing solid-state technology toward mass production. This is the same China that just negotiated to sell EVs into Canada until Trump threatened 100% tariffs on Saturday.
So let's connect these threads. Chinese manufacturers are developing superior battery technology. Canada negotiated a deal to import 49,000 Chinese EVs. Trump immediately threatened to block those vehicles from reaching North America through 100% tariffs.
Meanwhile, American oil companies stand accused in federal court of spending 50 years systematically suppressing the exact technologies that would have made the United States competitive in this space. Exxon had hybrids in the 1970s. Chevron controlled battery patents in the 1990s. Both shelved the technology.
And now, in 2026, Georgia consumers are being forced to pay $60 billion for fossil fuel infrastructure to power data centers that could be run on renewables plus storage, technology that's been cost competitive for years but somehow never gets the same guaranteed profit margins from public utility commissions.
This is what regulatory capture looks like. This is what happens when the industries being regulated effectively write the rules governing their own competition. The Georgia Public Service Commission didn't ask hard questions about alternatives. They approved a $16 billion gas plant expansion unanimously.
In Michigan, Attorney General Nessel is asking those hard questions in federal court. The lawsuit alleges patent manipulation, surveillance of watchdogs, intimidation of public officials, and infiltration of institutions to spread misleading information about renewables.
If these allegations are proven, and discovery in this case is going to be extensive, we're talking about conspiracy at a scale that rivals any corporate malfeasance in American history. This would make Enron look small.
Because Enron manipulated energy markets for profit. What Nessel is alleging is that oil companies manipulated energy markets to prevent competition from existing in the first place. They didn't just rig the game. They prevented other games from being played.
And the cost to consumers is almost incalculable. 50 years of artificially high gasoline prices. 50 years of delayed EV development. 50 years of utility-scale renewable installation happening slower than the technology allowed. How much did that cost the average American family?
How much did it cost in public health from air pollution? In climate disruption from excess emissions? In economic competitiveness as other nations surged ahead in clean energy manufacturing?
Trump's tariff threat isn't happening in a vacuum. It's happening in an environment where American oil dependence was engineered through coordinated suppression of alternatives. It's happening while utilities are locking in decades more fossil fuel dependence to power AI.
And it's happening while the Chinese manufacturers who weren't subject to Exxon and Chevron's patent manipulation are eating America's lunch on the technology that will define 21st century transportation and energy storage.
The Syria story we tracked this week doesn't directly connect to energy, but it's worth noting the context. While 126 miners were released from Al-Aqtan prison in Raqqa and the SDF ceasefire was extended, none of the reporting mentioned the oil fields that have made northeastern Syria strategically valuable for years.
That silence is itself revealing. American troops remain in that region, officially to counter ISIS, but positioned near Syria's largest oil infrastructure. When energy resources are involved, suddenly prison releases and ceasefires get covered without mentioning the oil. It's the same pattern, what's really at stake goes unreported.
Back to the bigger picture. We now have documented evidence, in the form of a federal lawsuit, alleging that the world's largest oil companies conspired to suppress renewable energy. We have a utility in Georgia forcing consumers into $60 billion of fossil fuel infrastructure for data centers. We have a president threatening tariffs specifically targeting electric vehicles while talking openly about seizing oil.
And we have Chinese manufacturers developing the exact battery technology that American companies could have commercialized decades ago if not for the alleged suppression documented in Michigan's lawsuit.
What does this mean for you? It means your energy costs are higher than they needed to be. It means your vehicle options are more limited than they should be. It means your utility is building expensive infrastructure that locks you into higher bills for decades.
It means that free market rhetoric around energy has been a fiction. Markets aren't free when incumbents suppress competing technologies through patent manipulation and coordinated investment redirection. That's the opposite of a free market.
So what do we do? First, follow the Michigan lawsuit. Discovery in this case will likely reveal internal documents showing exactly how these companies coordinated. That matters because other states can file similar suits.
Second, demand accountability from your Public Utility Commission. In Georgia, ratepayers need to organize and challenge the $60 billion gas plant expansion. Commissioners need to explain why they unanimously approved this without adequate consumer protection.
Third, contact your representatives about Trump's tariff threat. Ask them specifically about blocking access to more affordable EV options. Ask them why protecting American oil dependence is more important than giving consumers choices.
And fourth, understand that this is all connected. Trade policy, antitrust enforcement, utility regulation, and battery technology development are pieces of the same puzzle. The pattern is control, controlling your energy sources, controlling your transportation options, controlling the pace of technological change.
When Trump threatens 100% tariffs on Canadian imports to block Chinese EVs, he's protecting oil dependence. When Georgia Power builds $16 billion in gas plants while ratepayers foot a $60 billion bill, they're locking in fossil fuel dependence. When oil companies allegedly spent 50 years suppressing renewables, they were manufacturing that dependence.
The Michigan lawsuit names it correctly. This is cartel behavior. And cartels survive by controlling supply, eliminating competition, and capturing the regulators who are supposed to protect consumers.
But cartels also fall when the evidence becomes undeniable and the political will emerges to break them up. Standard Oil was dismantled under the Sherman Act. AT&T's monopoly was broken. It can happen again.
The question is whether it will happen before American consumers pay another $60 billion for unnecessary infrastructure, before another generation of battery patents gets shelved or locked up, before the gap between Chinese technological leadership and American fossil fuel dependence becomes impossible to close.
That's not a rhetorical question. That's the question the Michigan lawsuit is asking the courts to answer. That's the question Georgia ratepayers are asking their utility commission. That's the question American voters need to ask about trade policy that blocks affordable EVs while protecting oil profits.
We'll be following all of these stories as they develop. The Michigan lawsuit will take years, but discovery starts soon. Georgia's gas plants will start construction, and bills will start rising. Trump's tariff threats will either become policy or fade as negotiating tactics.
But the pattern is now visible. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. 50 years of suppression. Billions in socialized costs. And a technology gap that could have been a technology lead if not for the alleged conspiracy that Attorney General Nessel is now taking to federal court.
I'm Alex Truth.
I'm Maya Clarity.
This has been Truth Report. Keep questioning. Keep digging.
And follow the money. It always tells the truth.